Seattle was blanketed in a thick gray mist that morning, the kind that muted the city's colors and made everything feel quieter. The streets downtown buzzed lightly with early commuters, coffee cups in hand, jackets pulled tight. But Nathan Cole wasn't heading into his office like usual. Instead, the 45-year-old tech mogul, whose name was synonymous with one of the most powerful biotech companies in the country, walked aimlessly around the block, hands in his coat pockets, ignoring the buzz of his assistant's texts. It was the day of the company's most anticipated merger, one that would double their reach in medical AI systems. But Nathan needed air, space, something. Ever since the loss of his wife and young daughter in a tragic car accident 6 years ago, mornings like this felt unbearable. The colder ones were always worse. The silence in his penthouse, the way the world kept moving forward like nothing happened. It gnawed at him. As he turned onto a quieter street, something unusual caught his attention. In front of a small neighborhood pharmacy stood two little girls, identical twins, maybe 8 or 9 years old. They weren't shouting or calling out to anyone, just standing quietly beside a small cardboard box filled with clear plastic bags of what looked like homemade candy. They had made a sign with colorful markers. "Sweet Hope, $1 each, for our mom's medicine." Nathan slowed down. One of the girls, her hair in a lopsided braid, noticed him watching. She nudged the other gently. They both gave a small, polite smile, like they weren't used to anyone stopping. He took a few steps closer. "Are you selling these?" The girl with the braid nodded. "Yes, sir." "What for?" The other twin looked up, clutching the zipper of her coat. "Our mom's sick. We need to buy her medicine. She didn't want us to come out, but we have to try." Nathan crouched down to eye level. He noticed how worn their jackets were, how red their fingers looked from the cold. "What's your name?" he asked. "I'm Emily," said the one with the braid. "She's Grace." He looked at their box. "How many have you sold?" They glanced at each other. Grace whispered, "2." Nathan reached into his wallet and pulled out a $100 bill. "I'll take all of them." Their eyes widened. Before they could protest, he smiled gently. "But only if you show me where you live. I want to make sure your mom's okay." The hesitation in their eyes made his chest tighten. They didn't fully trust him, but something about his calm, kind tone made them glance at each other again and give a small nod. They led him a few blocks away, to a rundown apartment complex tucked between a laundromat and a pawn shop. The stairs creaked as they climbed. Inside their unit, it was dim and cold. A mattress on the floor, a broken heater, and on the small couch, a pale woman, mid-30s, lay curled beneath a blanket, coughing. "Mom," Grace whispered, "we brought someone." Rachel Bennett looked up slowly, dazed and weak. Her face froze when she saw the tall man standing in her living room. Nathan cleared his throat. "Hi, I'm Nathan. I met your daughters outside. They told me you weren't feeling well." Rachel tried to sit up. I'm sorry if they bothered you." "They didn't." He took a step forward. "You need a doctor, and not in a week or when you can afford it. Now." Rachel's eyes welled up. "I can't." "I'm not asking," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "I'll take care of everything. Please. Let me help." She looked like she wanted to argue, but her body didn't have the strength. She nodded faintly. That night, Rachel was admitted to one of the city's best hospitals under a private plan, with top specialists evaluating her condition. Nathan personally stayed in the waiting room while the girls dozed off beside him on the leather couch, their heads leaning against his shoulders as if it were the most natural thing in the world. The next morning, he arranged for temporary guardianship paperwork, just until Rachel recovered. He had no intention of overstepping. The girls could stay with him, safe and warm, in a home with enough space to run, play, and sleep, without the sound of pipes clanging or the fear of missed rent. He told himself it was a short-term gesture, but deep down, something had already begun to shift. Nathan's home sat high above Lake Washington, a sprawling modern mansion with wide glass walls, sharp lines, and a silence that once felt like control. Now that silence was broken by the unmistakable sounds of life: tiny footsteps, whispered laughter, the occasional clatter of a dropped toy echoing off marble floors. Emily and Grace, barely reaching the height of the kitchen counter, explored the house with wide eyes and cautious excitement. Nathan had cleared out one of the guest bedrooms for them, made sure it had soft lights, 2 beds, matching blankets, and even a shelf of books delivered that same day. They still clung to each other as they slept, but their voices had grown a little louder, more curious, more playful. Nathan watched them from a distance at first, through the reflection on the glass doors, over the rim of his coffee cup. It was like watching light return to a room that had been closed off for years. His assistant, Elena, raised an eyebrow as she passed him the weekly schedule. "You've rescheduled 3 investor meetings in 2 days," she said pointedly. "I know," he replied, not looking up. "And you've got twin girls playing hide-and-seek in the West Wing." He finally looked at her. "I also bought them coloring books. You forgot to mention that." Elena smirked, but said nothing more. She had been with him since the early years, before the company went public, before the fortune, before everything collapsed. She knew better than to press too hard when it came to matters Nathan never spoke of. Meanwhile, Rachel's condition had stabilized. The hospital staff noted how quickly she responded to treatment once stress and malnutrition were removed from the equation. She was kind, soft-spoken, with tired eyes, and a gratitude so deep it seemed to weigh on her. When Nathan visited her the 3rd evening, she was sitting up, hair brushed, sipping soup. She looked startled when she saw him. "I didn't expect you to come back tonight," she said. "I wanted to check in on you," he replied. "And on the girls. They're doing well." "Jede," she nodded slowly. "I hope they're not causing trouble." He hesitated. "Actually, they've kind of taken over the living room." Rachel smiled, the first genuine smile he'd seen on her face. "I owe you so much," she said, the smile fading as quickly as it came. "More than I can repay." "You don't owe me anything," he said. "They needed help. And so did you." Rachel studied him. "Why did you stop that day? Most people wouldn't have." Nathan looked away, jaw tightening. He almost gave her the usual answer, something polished and vague. But instead he said quietly, "You reminded me of someone." The words hung between them, unanswered. Back at the house, the twins had created a nightly routine. After dinner, they would bring their blankets to the couch and watch old animated movies. Emily would ask 100 questions. Grace would fall asleep first, always curled up near Nathan's side. He had never spoken about his daughter to anyone in years. But one night, when Emily asked why there were no pictures of kids in the house, he paused. "I used to have a little girl," he said softly. Emily tilted her head. "Where is she now?" Nathan took a deep breath. "She's gone. A long time ago." Emily nodded with quiet understanding. "I think you're still a dad. You just forgot for a while." Those words didn't leave him for days. The illusion that things would stay simple didn't last long. It began with a phone call. Rachel was recovering faster than anyone expected. The doctors credited the care. She credited the absence of stress. And she was eager to leave the hospital, not because she didn't feel welcome, but because she couldn't shake the discomfort of being helped by someone like Nathan Cole. She called one morning, her voice clear but distant. "Nathan, I'm ready to come home," she said. "I appreciate everything you've done, but I can't accept this forever." He paused. "You're not ready. A few more days won't hurt. I'm not talking about the hospital. I mean all of it. The house, the care, everything. I need to get back on my feet." "And the girls?" he asked carefully. "They're my daughters," she said. I'll figure it out. That was the first time he felt it. A flicker of resistance. Not anger. Fear, maybe, that this fragile new rhythm in his life might vanish. Still, he nodded, even though she couldn't see him. Of course. We'll talk about it when you're home. Shy. But things grew complicated when Rachel actually returned. Nathan had arranged everything: drivers, groceries, even installed a heating unit in her apartment. The place still wasn't ideal, but it was stable, safe. And yet, as he stood in the doorway, while the twins unpacked their few belongings, a strange emptiness washed over him. The girls hugged him tightly. "Will you visit us?" Emily asked. "Of course," he said. But something in his voice cracked. Rachel noticed. "You've done enough. I won't ask for more." "You're not asking," he said. "That's the problem. You're doing everything alone again." "I've always done everything alone," she replied quietly. "Until now." Over the next week, the visits continued. The girls clung to him when he arrived. Rachel offered polite smiles, often avoiding eye contact. And Nathan felt the shift, the way Rachel seemed more guarded, the way his presence began to feel like an intrusion instead of a gift. Then came the turning point. One afternoon, after bringing the girls back from the park, Nathan arrived to find Rachel on the phone, pacing the tiny apartment with a deep frown. She ended the call quickly, clearly flustered. "Everything okay?" he asked. She hesitated. "That was from the hospital, about the billing." His heart sank. "I told them to send everything to my firm. You're not supposed to—" "I canceled it." "What?" "I told them not to bill you anymore. I'm applying for support through a medical aid program." Nathan stared at her. "Rachel, why would you do that?" "Because I don't want to be someone you save," she snapped. "I don't want the girls thinking we owe our lives to a stranger with a mansion." His voice dropped. "Is that what you think I am?" She crossed her arms. "I don't know what you are, Nathan. You swooped in like something out of a movie and gave us everything. But I can't live like this, wondering when the help ends or what comes after." The silence between them was thick. Emily and Grace watched from the hallway, sensing the tension. Nathan looked at the floor. "I didn't do any of this out of pity." Rachel's eyes softened for a moment, but she didn't speak. "I lost everything once," he continued. "I wasn't trying to replace it, but maybe I was trying to remember what it felt like to have something to fight for." Her expression shifted, but she said only, "I need space, Nathan." He nodded slowly. "Okay." That night, he went home to the mansion. The laughter was gone. The silence returned, louder than ever. The next day he didn't show up, and the day after that either. For the first time since they met, the distance between them grew real. While Nathan stayed away, trying to respect Rachel's need for space, his absence echoed louder than his presence ever did. Emily and Grace had grown used to little things: fresh fruit in the mornings, bedtime stories Nathan read in his calm, deep voice, the way he asked about their drawings and remembered the names of their school friends. Without him, their world felt a little colder. They didn't complain, but Rachel could tell. Grace barely touched her cereal. Emily became quieter. At work, Nathan returned to the structured chaos of board meetings and innovation summits. The upcoming merger consumed everyone around him, except him. His mind drifted mid-call. He stared longer at his phone than he should have. The silence of his home, once tolerable, now pressed against him. Elena noticed. "You haven't mentioned the girls lately," she said one morning over coffee. He gave a half shrug. "I figured it's best to stay away." Rachel made it clear. She also made it clear she's trying to survive with dignity. That's not the same thing as pushing you out. He didn't respond. Meanwhile, Rachel struggled in silence. Even with Nathan's upgrades, her apartment still felt too small, too fragile. Medical bills began slipping through the cracks again. She had picked up a part-time job at a bookstore, leaving the girls with a neighbor after school. She was exhausted, and yet every time she saw Emily holding the stuffed bear Nathan gave her or heard Grace whisper about his house with the big windows, Rachel felt her chest tighten. She wasn't ungrateful, but she had never been good at accepting help, especially from a man who had everything, while she had almost nothing. Then came a letter. It arrived at Nathan's office, handwritten in a child's careful block letters. Dear Mr. Nathan, we miss you. Mommy says you're busy, but I know you're not mad. Grace and me drew you something. It's a picture of us in your house. You said we could come visit the fish pond again. Do you still remember? Love, Emily, and Grace too. Nathan read it 3 times. He didn't say a word to Elena, just folded the paper and placed it in his coat pocket. That evening he drove to their building, unsure if he'd even go up. He parked across the street, watched the windows, and that's when he saw Rachel sitting on the fire escape, elbows on her knees, staring into nothing. Not sad, just tired. In that moment he realized something. It wasn't about rescuing anyone. It was about showing up and staying. The next morning, Rachel opened the door expecting to see the neighbor's son returning a borrowed charger. Instead, Nathan stood there, holding a small bag of pastries and a nervous smile. I brought breakfast, he said. Rachel blinked, stunned. You didn't have to. I know, he replied, stepping just inside. But I wanted to. The girls ran in from the hallway, their faces lighting up. Grace wrapped her arms around his legs without hesitation. Emily followed, half laughing, half crying. We thought you forgot us, she said. Nathan knelt. I couldn't forget you if I tried. That moment cracked something open. Not just in the girls, but in Rachel, too. She let him stay for coffee. They spoke quietly in the kitchen while the twins colored at the table. The conversation was halting at first, but then it spilled open. Rachel admitted the truth. How hard it had been to accept help. How unworthy she sometimes felt of his kindness. How afraid she was of growing dependent on something that might disappear. Nathan listened without interrupting. And when she finished, he said only this. I never offered help expecting you to give something back, but I can't pretend I don't care. About them, about you. Rachel lowered her eyes. And if we can't give you anything in return? You already did, he said. You reminded me what life feels like when it's not just about profit and silence and pretending I'm okay. She stared at him. And something changed between them. Not romance, not yet, but a recognition. A kind of trust neither had given easily before. From that day on, Nathan didn't just visit. He became part of their routine again, but differently this time. Less like a savior, more like someone simply willing to show up, even in the quiet, ordinary moments. One Saturday afternoon, Nathan surprised the girls by taking them to a lakeside science museum. They held his hands the entire time. Grace kept pointing at anything shaped like a heart or a brain, saying, You made this stuff, right? He laughed. Not exactly, but I helped make the machines that study it. At the end of the exhibit, the girls found a donation wall, names etched into polished steel for contributors to the children's education program. Emily looked up. Your name's not here. Nathan smiled. That's okay. Maybe one day yours will be. A week later, Rachel received a letter from the Community Housing Authority. An anonymous donor had covered 6 months of her rent, with an option to relocate to a better unit closer to the girls' school. The only note attached was written in the same neat handwriting Nathan always used when signing contracts. It simply read, No strings, just a fresh start. But it wasn't until Rachel found Emily's school notebook that she realized how deep the bond had grown. On the front page, under Family Drawing, Emily had drawn 4 stick figures. 2 small girls, 1 tall man, and a woman standing beside them. All holding hands. She had written, This is what our forever might look like. Rachel stared at the page for a long time, tears gathering in her eyes. The days following the turning point weren't marked by any grand declarations or dramatic scenes. Instead, they were shaped by small choices, consistent, gentle acts that slowly redefined the dynamic between Nathan, Rachel, and the girls. Nathan didn't move them into his home again. He didn't suggest anything that might make Rachel feel like she owed him. But he came by often, some mornings before work, some evenings after. He brought books, helped with homework, even fixed the broken closet door Rachel had been wrestling with for weeks. And slowly, the rhythm returned. But something else began to unfold too. Something less visible, but just as important. Nathan's presence, once rare and foreign in their lives, had become familiar. And that familiarity was what made everything more complicated. One afternoon, Rachel sat at the kitchen table watching Nathan help Grace build a solar system model for a school project. He was wearing a hoodie, sleeves pushed up, a smear of glue on one finger. He laughed when Grace corrected him on the number of Saturn's rings. Rachel smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Later, when the girls were asleep, she offered him tea and sat beside him on the couch. "I need to ask you something," she said. Nathan looked at her, alert. "Why are you still here?" He opened his mouth, then closed it. She pressed gently. "I don't mean that in a bad way, but people like you don't usually stay." Nathan took a breath. "Maybe I'm not like most people." Rachel looked down. "I'm scared of what this is becoming. Of how much they depend on you. Of how much I might be starting to." He nodded. "That makes two of us." She glanced up. "I'm not pretending I have it all figured out," he said, "but I know what it feels like to lose something you love. I'd rather risk this than walk away again." Rachel didn't respond right away. But for the first time, she didn't pull away either. That night, as he left, she walked him to the door. "Good night, Nathan." "Good night, Rachel." The door didn't feel like a wall between them anymore. Just a pause, a breath. But not everyone around Nathan was as welcoming of the change. At a board meeting the next morning, one of the senior partners made an offhand comment during a lunch break. "You've been skipping dinners with investors, and showing up at school plays instead. Careful, Cole. That kind of softness doesn't impress shareholders." Nathan stared at him for a long moment before replying, "I built this company to save lives. I'm just starting to live mine." The man blinked, then looked away. Later that week, Elena handed Nathan a wrapped box without a card. "It was delivered this morning, from the girls." He opened it slowly. Inside was a hand-decorated mug. Bright colors, crooked letters. "Best friend ever." Drawn stick figures circled the mug. 4 again. This time all smiling. And one of them had a small square in its hand. A phone. In a speech bubble. "We can call you whenever now." Nathan stared at it for a long time, then smiled. Not a business smile. A real one. Winter gave way to spring, and with it came the soft bloom of change. Real change, not forced by tragedy or obligation, but nurtured through quiet effort. Rachel was the first to feel it. She had taken on more hours at the bookstore and recently picked up freelance copy editing work from home. The bills were getting paid. Her strength had returned. So had her voice. One morning she found herself standing in front of a mirror, smoothing her blouse, unsure why she suddenly cared how she looked. It wasn't for anyone in particular, but she hadn't felt that sense of self in a long, long time. The girls were thriving. They had made friends, brought home gold stars from school, and learned how to ride bikes. Emily never stopped talking about space. Grace kept writing stories in a little pink notebook. And Nathan? Nathan became part of all of it, like a thread that held pieces together without drawing attention to itself. He didn't try to take the place of anyone. He didn't press for labels, but he showed up. When Emily scraped her knee, he was there with a bandage and a funny face. When Grace was nervous before her school play, he helped her rehearse the lines. When Rachel's car broke down, he came not with a lecture, but with his sleeves rolled up and a new battery. But Nathan was also changing in quieter ways. His office no longer consumed him. He turned down a speaking engagement in Tokyo to stay for Grace's birthday. He reduced his board obligations to spend more time mentoring young engineers instead of courting new investors. He was building again, but something personal this time. Something real. One Saturday, he took the girls hiking near Mat Rainier. At the summit of their trail, while they were catching their breath and eating sandwiches, Emily looked up at him and asked, "Are you always going to be here?" Nathan froze for a second, then nodded. "If you want me to be." Grace, ever observant, tilted her head. "What if Mommy says no?" He smiled gently. "Then I'll still be your friend. Always." When they got home that evening, Rachel was waiting by the doorway. Her eyes searched his face, not for answers, but for something else. Certainty. Security. "I want to talk," she said. They sat outside on the apartment steps, wrapped in light jackets. Rachel didn't hesitate this time. "I've spent most of my life being afraid. Of not being enough. Of losing control. Of letting people in." Nathan nodded slowly. "I know the feeling. But the girls love you. And I think I do too. Not because of what you've done, but because of who you are when you're with us." He said nothing for a long time, only reached for her hand. She let him hold it. No fanfare, no kiss. Just two people who had been through enough to understand that healing isn't loud, it's steady. And love, when it finally returns, doesn't demand anything. It simply waits to be seen. From that moment on, things didn't get easier, but they became clearer. They made no announcements. Nathan still lived in his house, Rachel in hers. But weekends were shared, holidays planned together, school meetings attended side by side. The world didn't need to define them. They had already chosen each other. Spring turned into early summer, and for the first time in years, the future didn't feel like something to fear. Rachel had been approved for a full-time position at the bookstore with a promotion to assistant manager. It wasn't glamorous, but it was hers, earned by her own effort. She'd even started looking into night classes at the local community college, exploring the idea of getting certified in early childhood education. Nathan continued balancing his business with his newfound role in their lives. He attended school events, donated to the local library anonymously, took Rachel and the girls on weekend outings. Nothing extravagant, just time. Real time. And then came the invitation. Emily and Grace's school was hosting a family day, an open event where kids presented projects and invited their families to join them for a short program. Each student had to prepare a short introduction, thanking someone important in their life. Rachel expected the girls to mention her, and maybe Nathan too. But what she didn't expect was what Emily did on stage. Dressed in a simple blue dress, hair in a fresh braid, she stood in front of the classroom holding her poster board titled, "Our Hero." She cleared her throat and said, "This is Nathan Cole. He makes machines that help sick people. But that's not why we picked him." The room went quiet. "We picked him because he saw us, when no one else did. He helped our mom when she was sick, and he never made us feel small, even though he's the richest person we know." Soft laughter rippled through the parents. Grace stood beside her and added, "He doesn't just visit us. He remembers our favorite colors. He lets us win card games. He fixed our bookshelf. That's why we call him our family." Rachel's breath caught. Across the room, Nathan sat frozen, stunned, until the girls pointed at him and shouted, "Come here!" The teacher smiled. "It's okay, Mr. Cole." Nathan stood slowly and walked to the front. The girls each took one of his hands. He looked at Rachel, unsure. She stood and joined them too. The four of them stood side by side, facing a room of strangers who somehow understood, without needing an explanation, that something real had been built here. Afterward, as they walked through the schoolyard, Rachel turned to Nathan. "You okay?" she asked, teasing. He nodded, quiet. "They called me family." "You are?" she said simply. "If you still want to be." Nathan stopped walking. "I never stopped," he replied. It was a Sunday afternoon in late July when everything came to a head. Rachel had just finished preparing lunch. The girls were in the living room working on a craft project. Nathan was outside, helping the neighbor's son fix a flat bike tire. Something small, but enough to remind Rachel just how fully he had become woven into their lives. She stood by the window watching him crouch in the sun, his hands streaked with grease, laughing with the boy like he had no empire waiting for him. And that's when her phone rang. Unknown number. Local area code. She answered. "Ms. Bennett?" a formal voice said. "This is Cynthia Harris. I'm with the Department of Child Welfare. Do you have a moment?" Rachel's chest tightened. "Yes. What is this about?" "It's regarding your daughters. We've received an anonymous report concerning inappropriate financial involvement with a non-relative guardian, Mr. Nathan Cole." Rachel's stomach dropped. "There's no formal case yet," the voice continued, "but we are required to investigate. We'd like to schedule a home visit within the next 72 hours. Rachel hung up, numb. Her fingers trembled. When Nathan stepped inside minutes later, wiping his hands with a rag, she turned to face him, eyes wide, breathing uneven. "What's wrong?" he asked, instantly alert. "They're investigating," she whispered. "Someone reported our situation. Said it's inappropriate, that we're depending on you too much." Nathan's entire posture shifted. "Who?" "I don't know. Maybe someone from the hospital, or the building, or your company. I don't know." His voice remained calm but cold. "They think I'm manipulating you." Rachel didn't speak. She didn't have to. The girls peeked around the corner, sensing the tension again. Nathan lowered his voice. "They can't take them, Rachel." "They won't," she said, but her own voice lacked conviction. For the first time since the beginning, fear returned. Not of failure, but of loss. Again. That evening, Nathan made a decision. He called his legal team and began the process of applying for official guardianship documentation. Not as a power play, but as a protective measure. He knew the girls belonged with Rachel. That wouldn't change. But if the system saw their bond as unstable, he had to prove it was structured. Rachel sat across from him as he explained. "You don't have to do this," she said. "I do," he replied. "Not because I want control, but because I want them safe, and I want you protected." Her eyes glistened. "What if it makes things worse?" "It won't. I'll keep everything open. You'll be listed as the primary. I'm not taking anything away, just making it official that I'm here to stay." A long pause. Then Rachel nodded. 3 days later, the caseworker visited. She walked through the apartment, took notes, asked questions. Then she asked to speak with the girls alone. Rachel tensed. Nathan stayed silent, letting the process unfold. When Emily emerged from the room, she was holding her drawing notebook. She walked straight to the caseworker and said, "We don't have a dad, but we have him. That's what counts, right?" Grace nodded behind her. "He makes us feel safe." The caseworker wrote something down and smiled. "I think I have everything I need." That night, Nathan stayed for dinner. No celebration, no champagne, just pizza and juice boxes and cartoons in the background. Rachel stood beside him at the kitchen sink, drying plates. "Do you realize what you did this week?" she asked. He glanced at her. "What?" "You didn't just protect us," she said. "You became one of us." He looked down. I don't know what that means. She smiled. It means you're not saving anyone anymore. You're part of the story now. The report was closed 2 weeks later with no further action. The caseworker described the household as unconventional but emotionally stable, with exceptional support systems in place. By then, everything had quietly shifted. Rachel had accepted a scholarship through a local foundation, something Nathan helped her apply for but never took credit for. She began her classes in the fall, juggling work, motherhood, and studying with quiet determination. Emily and Grace flourished. Their drawings filled the fridge. Their laughter filled the rooms. Their bedtime stories stretched later and later each night, because Nathan had a new rule. You can always ask one more question. He still lived in his own home, but there was barely a night he didn't spend on their couch. Sometimes with Grace curled up beside him, sometimes helping Emily memorize science facts, sometimes just sitting in the kitchen with Rachel, sharing quiet tea and long looks. They didn't rush anything. No dramatic proposals, no sudden declarations. Just a choice, repeated daily, to stay. And that became the real ending. Not a rescue story, not a fairy tale, but a quiet, beautiful life they built. Together. 3 years later, on a crisp autumn morning, Nathan stood beside Rachel at a school science fair. Emily's project on the circulatory system had just won second place. Grace had written a short story called The Man Who Never Left. It made her teacher cry. As the girls ran ahead toward the playground, Rachel reached for Nathan's hand. "Do you ever miss the quiet?" she asked with a teasing smile. He looked at her, then at the girls laughing in the distance. "Not for a second." If this story touched your heart, don't forget to leave a comment and tell us which moment hit you the hardest. Share it with someone who believes in second chances, quiet heroes, and the power of unexpected family. And if you've ever met someone who changed your life in a way you didn't expect, we'd love to hear your story too. Tap the like button, subscribe for more heartwarming stories, and remember, sometimes the people who change everything are the ones who simply decide to stay.